we have some good news to report here on Washington Watch as we head into the weekend. After a 6-month investigation, police in West Midlands in the UK have dropped charges against Isabel Von Spruce for the crime of praying silently. Von Spruce was arrested last March for praying in a buffer zone surrounding an abortion facility where a, quote, public spaces protection order banning prayer and other activities was established by local authorities. Now, here's a video of the incident from last December.
Is you standing here part of the protest?
No, I'm not protesting.
Are you praying?
I might be praying in my head out loud.
So I'll ask you once more, will you voluntarily come with us now to the police station for me to ask you some questions about today and other days where there are allegations that you've broken public spaces protection order?
If I've got a choice, then no.
Okay, well then you're under arrest.
Yes, that officer asked her if she was praying in her head. Joining me now to discuss this is Lois McLatchie. She's a senior legal communications officer with ADF International, the organization that has supported Isabel's legal defense. Lois, welcome to Washington Watch.
Thank you, and thank you for covering this important story.
Well, thank you for staying up so late to bring it to us. Was this, in fact, a thought crime investigation?
Well, it certainly seems so. In the moment that she was arrested the second time, Isabel was told, "You're praying. That is the offense." Silent praying, she confirmed, and they said, "Yes, you are praying, and that is the offense." And therefore, she was arrested twice for thinking in her head prayerful thoughts towards God about abortion. So, yeah, you might think this comes from 1984, but no, it's England in 2023.
Yeah. Well, we do have thoughts of 1984, to be sure. Now, here on this side of the pond, we know that the UK does not have a First Amendment, and we value our First Amendment, at least we think we do, but we realize the law is not the same everywhere else. Does that just mean that the law in the UK allows the government to punish people for speaking or thinking things that they don't like?
No, it doesn't. So under international human rights law, freedom of thought and freedom of speech are robustly protected. And thankfully, in this story, freedom of speech and freedom of thought did win the day. And the right conclusion was reached by police officers after a grueling 6-month investigation, which should never have happened. But at least we had a good result in this case. Now, at ADF UK, we are actually defending more than one person for this thought crime of praying outside an abortion facility, and we want this to end. So we were hoping for the government to release guidance that makes very much clear to the police that freedom of thought is protected in the UK. There is no crime such as silent prayer. So we're hoping that the government will clarify that as soon as possible.
It's amazing that you have to say that. There is no crime such as silent prayer, as if such a thing could be criminalized. But when these charges were dropped, did the authorities make a statement? Was there a justification for dropping the charges? Did they do it silently? Did they, apologize?
There was an apology given for the length of time that it took to reach them to get to this conclusion. They took 6 months, and they had initially imposed quite restrictive bail conditions on Isabel. They were later dropped, but as I said, 6 months is a very long time to be waiting to hear about whether you're going to face trial. Bear in mind that Isabel has faced trial before for the same crime and found innocent when she was simply praying in her head the first time outside that abortion facility. So we knew from the courts that this was not a crime. The police had to then take 6 months to decide again that this was not a crime. So they did apologize for the length of delay, but we have to do much more to ensure this doesn't happen again. And that's why we really need the clarity and the guidance from the government on this.
Yeah, and is there any indication of what you have to do for 6 months? I mean, because the facts seem fairly clear. We've seen the video. We understand it seems to be agreement about what they were concerned about. Why does it take 6 months for them to say this is ridiculous?
It is bizarre. You're absolutely right. Now, one of the problems is that with the legislation bringing in these buffer zones, in Isabel's case, in a local legislation, and in the UK's case, this is being rolled out across the country. The legislation is very vague. So it will ban things such as influence. Now, what does influence mean outside a worship facility? Well, some people would say that means harassment, and it bans anyone from committing violence or harassment outside a clinic. And we would say, well, that's great. Nobody wants to see anybody act with violence or harassment towards anyone. But with using words like influence, what it means in reality is that things are banned but shouldn't be banned. That means, handing out charitable leaflets about support available to women who might want it on this very, dark day of their lives, where they might be considering all of their options. They might want to hear about support services available. And it captures things like prayer, and in this case, even silent prayer. So it just shows how much we need clarity in the law.
Now, this is obviously a good result, but oftentimes when you're dealing with the government, the process is the punishment, even if you are ultimately vindicated. Is there any concern that what she's had to go through here is going to discourage people from having public expressions of faith?
Absolutely. Yeah, the process can often be the punishment, and that can deter people. We see this with hate speech laws and other kind of restrictions on speech that are spreading across Europe, that if one person can be dragged through the courts, it often makes people think, well, I don't want to have to go through that. That seems like a lot of hassle, even if the end result is okay. So it will stop people from speaking about things that they want to speak about, and even in this case, thinking, if you can imagine it, about what they want to think about. So it does have a freezing, chilling effect on freedom in society. So yeah, it's really important that we have these cases in the media publicized. So I'm very thankful that you're covering this on your show tonight, because we need to show people that there is success when we challenge these laws, and that freedom of thought and freedom of speech are protected.
Well, in about 30 seconds, how did Isabel respond when she got the news that the charges are being dropped?
Isabel, she's delighted to have this result. Obviously, she's grateful to not have to be prosecuted a second time for the thoughts she's held in her head. And she's thankful to be able to go back out and pray for women who are considering this difficult decision. But she too has concerns about people who are looking on and who themselves would be censoring their own thoughts as a result of this. So she's very keen that people know that freedom of thought and freedom of speech are protected in human rights law. And that's not something that any authority can take away. The government does not have the right to tell you what to think or not to think.
Lois McLatchie, ADF International, thanks so much for your time and the great news.
Thank you so much.